Yeah, it's mindset cafe, we all about that mindset. Gotta stay focused, never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast with your boy Devan Gonzalez, and we got our first repeat guest. We got my cousin and one of my best friends, Ryon Healy, with us today. What's up, Ryan?
That's the first time I think you didn't say little cousin, actually. You always like to let people know that you're a little older than me. But yeah, it's awesome to be back, man. I mean, I feel like it's appropriate. If I'm going to be a repeat customer, might as well be family, right?
Exactly. And you going into the entrepreneurial space and your transition from the MLB. I mean, your story is not the common story, but it is relatable to a lot, because people do transition jobs, they transition into entrepreneurship and stuff like that. So, it's one of those things where your mindset, your perspective, just from your professional baseball career to now being an entrepreneur, I know is one of the things where a lot of people picked up so much value that I have had other guests wanting to come back on, and I've been holding them off because I was like, honestly, it has to be Ryan before I bring anyone on. So for a second time, so I told you that. So I'm glad we were able to schedule it in. So thank you for taking the time.
Dude, we got like some upgrades too. We got the whole intro coming now. We got the new name, the new logo. Like you kind of manifested this, not just the gym, but like the podcast. You just kind of went. And someone told me as an entrepreneur recently, they're like, entrepreneurs are building the airplane as they're flying it. And that's exactly what we've kind of done with this podcast. And it's been fun to see the growth and the progression of it.
No, I appreciate that. That is definitely a true statement with a lot of things in entrepreneurship. So let's dive straight in. I mean, that's honestly kind of my first question to you. Like, how has it been for you in your experience? Like, from going from the MLB, right? When obviously you probably dabbled a little bit, or I know you dabbled a little bit in like real estate and stuff later in your career, at least. But jumping full force into becoming an entrepreneur, like, what was your expectations? What is reality? What was that like contraception?
I thought I was going to be a multi-millionaire at this point and own multiple seven-figure businesses. Kind of joking, but also serious. Like, oh, I'm going to figure it out. Like, my work ethic's going to get me there. I think I definitely discredited the lack of experience that I have and just the understanding of business and working with people. And I think the thing that's transferred the most is just leadership quality and accountability. Like, those are just baseball things at work. But I went from getting my ass kicked on the baseball field to getting my ass kicked in the business world and the real estate world. And trying to find ways to really love the process of learning, because every time I learn something new, I know that I can apply it next time and not make the same mistake twice.
No, that's awesome. Did you have anyone that you knew? I mean, obviously besides me, since we're family, but did you have anyone that you knew like in your closer circle of either in the professional baseball world or just friends growing up that were entrepreneurs, and maybe you were getting some of your ideas of you being a multimillionaire in the entrepreneur space before you actually dived in?
No, and I probably should have, because I don't I think my perspective and my sense of reality would have been a little bit more accurate. Um, I did hire like mentors to work with, but sometimes when you hire people, they paint this beautiful picture, especially as you're going through like the discovery call and the sales process and the early stages of the program. Like, everything is roses and rainbows, and it's not really until you get your teeth kicked in that they're like, oh yeah, by the way, this is kind of the reality of how this goes. Like, now we learn from this, and how we are judged is how we respond to this, adversity. But that didn't concern me. But I wish that there was a little bit better understanding of like, okay, what's my conversion rate when I'm trying to do inbound leads, some of the KPIs, like the details. I'm a detail guy, and I didn't have enough knowledge and experience in the business world to understand the details.
No, I mean that's huge because I mean, yeah, I mean the sales process, it's meant to paint the picture of what life could be, right? And that's what separates people as entrepreneurs or in life in general, is realizing that the picture isn't that's the perfect picture, right? You got to make your perfect picture, and you're gonna, in the process, you're gonna have to tear a couple pages and, restart a few times or learn the lessons to perfect it. But it's huge that, I mean, I've known your work ethic. So when you first jumped into kind of full ship, I mean, you've talked a few times, and I wasn't, and I still don't have any doubt that you're going to end up hitting that multi-million-dollar mark, right? It's you got to have that work ethic, and that's not something that you're born with, but you have to learn it. And again, you've done it over your career in baseball, and it just transitions, right?
Yeah, I think the difference is like the telescope and microscope goals. Like I always had the telescope goals of the long-term vision of what I wanted. Like especially when I retired from baseball, I knew the life that I wanted to some regard, but I didn't understand the steps that I needed to take to get there. And when I was playing baseball, I knew the process, I knew the details, I knew the steps. And if you went out there and you got your ass kicked for a whole season, you hit really terrible, you made a bunch of errors, you go back home, you recalibrate, you set a process and steps to get back to the place you want to be. In business, anytime something went wrong, it was like, whoa, that was a first. I didn't understand that. How do I learn from that? And then how do I not do that again?
Right. And I think that's huge. Like having, like they say, it's the devil's in the details, right? You got to have that telescope, vision, like you're saying. You got to have that 5, that 10 year, vision and that goal. But at the same time, like there's a lot of detail that goes into those little things, and a lot of those details are learned along the way, right? Like
Hmm.
you learn what a KPI is, you learn what a CRM is, you learn what all these different abbreviations and analogies and systems and processes and all these things. You don't just, there's no blueprint or book that's handed to you when you first start a business that can tell you and label out all the fires that are going to be presented, right? You're not the entrepreneur that you are when you first started, when you first left the MLB, right? You've grown to who you are right now, and in a year, 5 years, 10 years, you're going to be that much better because you continually progress over time. Just like in baseball, you were not the same player when you were playing from the little leagues, right?
Hmm.
There's skills, there's tools that are developed, and the only way they can be developed sometimes is time, right? Just like in anything. Like if you're a doctor and it's your first year and your first year of residency, like you're gonna make mistakes, right? But then you become the person that gives the answers to those mistakes.
100%. I think I had a mental performance coach that I've been working with about 3 months ago, started working with him, maybe a little less. And he said something to me, and the ability for him to relate real life scenarios into analogies that I understand. He looked at me and said, Ryan, when you got drafted in the minor leagues, how many years did it take you to get to the major leagues? I was like, well, it took me about 3 years. He's like, okay. He's like, so why do you think that would be different right now on your entrepreneur journey? I said,
Yep.
"Dang, okay, I didn't understand that. I thought it was going to happen now. I'm sitting here counting the dollars and trying to figure out how can I make more money, and I lost my focus on the impact that I can make with the people that I was working with or working for, and I just got so consumed by how much money can I make now, and the distraction was real, and it took me away from some of the focus and the improvements that I could have made in that short window when I was really, really spinning."
No, and I mean that's honestly that's a huge like lesson learned right there, right? Because
Hmm.
that goes for anything in life. So I mean, yeah, you were in the minor leagues for a while, and you became a better player through those 3 years, right?
Yep.
That's why you got the major deal, and that's why you got brought up and you stayed up, right? You didn't get just up for a game and drop back down.
Yeah.
But in
Exactly.
business, it's like that's where you have to not focus on just the dollars, because then that's your only focus. When you focus on the impact, like you're saying, then all of a sudden the dollars start to follow, the business starts to grow, the impact starts to grow, like everything starts to grow when you have relation, like it's not just transactional, right? You're really trying to build relationships and focus on impact. So with what you're saying, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've had to learn or that you've learned to this point? And, what was your biggest obstacle to learn the hard way?
Man. I think what I just touched on is probably one of the biggest things that I've struggled with, is just focusing on the income and not the impact that I can create out here in this world. And I think using my story that is a little bit unique, but also very relatable to a lot of people when you break it down to the nuts and bolts of it. Um, I think putting my hand in too many pots. Like I really struggled. I could not say no to people. Like whenever someone had a good idea, I would have a good idea off of it, or I would come up with a good idea and tell it to a bunch of people and find a way to try to get it going. And instead of just be able to say no, I don't think I had enough clarity and focus on what I really wanted to do and accomplish. So I did say yes to everything. I was a yes man for a couple of years since I retired. And it wasn't until recently when I learned how to say no to things that maybe didn't fit my short-term and long-term goals of, myself personally as a family man and also professionally as the businesses that I want to focus on. I spread myself too thin. I was overwhelmed, and I had to take a big step back. And fortunately, when we had our son in January, I was able to step back from a few of the jobs I was working and just kind of recalibrate. So I spent about a month or two recalibrating, and I feel like I'm in a better place now than I was 2 years ago when I retired from baseball. That's for dang sure.
Oh yeah, I mean that transition. I mean, we talked then that transition is hard because your identity was wrapped up too in being a professional baseball player, right?
Yeah, very much so.
So have you been able to kind of shift, or not shift your personality, your what you're tied to being an entrepreneur, because that's not what I would want. But have you been able to kind of disassociate your job, your career, like all that kind of stuff from who you are, from like when it was in baseball?
Yeah, I think I let baseball become my identity for so long. It was everything that I did in every second of every day, whether it was in season or out of season, was directed towards the performance on the baseball field. When that was all of a sudden taken away, I really had to figure out what mattered most to me. The blessed part for me is I had kids right when I stopped playing baseball, and I don't think that that was a coincidence. I think that was supposed to happen because my identity now pivoted from a baseball player to now being a father, and then really being able to focus my energy on being a husband. And then obviously you cycle in and out of some of those things. And I think I lived for a little bit out of preference and not principle. And when I played baseball, I constantly lived out of principle. Everything that I did, like I said, was to better myself as a baseball player to help my team win more games. When I retired from baseball, I lived out of preference for a while. So I kind of did what I wanted when I wanted without any real rhyme or reason to it. And I thought that that was freedom. And it wasn't. It was kind of shackling me to this unknowns on a day to day or week to week basis, where I'd wake up Monday morning and I got no idea what my week looks like. And then all of a sudden the anxiety sets in and now I'm playing catch up. So I would lose and waste valuable time throughout Monday through Friday that I could have been progressing because I was too busy trying to process my anxiety of why am I anxious right now? Why am I stressed right now? Like I really don't have anything to do. Or even if I did, I'm not organized enough to execute it. So just be present with your family. Be the best father and the best husband you can be in this moment and let time kind of run its course.
Right. No, I think that's huge. And there's a powerful like message I heard from his name's Cody Jefferson. Met him a few times, awesome dude. But his whole thing is basically like, I'm a father, right? I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a husband, right? And then it's, you list out the things that you are, right? And not like,
Mhm.
I'm an entrepreneur, nothing that's like not your close circle. And then I sell, or I do this, I'm a baseball player because I'm a husband, or this is what I do, right? So it's
Yep.
everything that you do, it's for a reason. And once you know those core reasons, like you said, being a husband, being a father, like all those things, everything else just starts to make sense, and you do it, and you find your why real quick for all that. So
Mhm.
with that being said, like how have you been able to transition from diving in full force to being an entrepreneur to really segmenting your time like with your family and being attentive and all that kind of stuff, because I know that's a struggle for a lot of entrepreneurs right out the gate.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is where some of my experience, and for me, like something I wrote down recently that I love is my confidence. Like, where do I get my confidence from? It's from my experience, my preparation, and I like to go back and watch some highlight reels to give me that little boost. So, experience in the entrepreneurship space, I don't have a ton. So I had to find ways to reflect on my baseball career and pull some things that I learned throughout those decades of playing. What was transferable from my playing career to my entrepreneur career? And the number one thing that I found was my scheduling and my organization with my time management. When I played, I was very diligent with every minute of every day had a purpose. And I always lacked that in the entrepreneur journey. So I got to a point where I had to use my experience there to schedule out what an ideal day looked like for me. And since I work a couple different jobs and I run a couple different businesses, I had to have an A day and a B day just to make sure that I was hitting some of those key points. So, and to your point of family time, I schedule my family time.
Hmm.
Like 5 o'clock is a hard stop for me. Like, unless I'm doing hitting lessons in the cage and I've had to make adjustments there of making sure that I'm stopping a little bit sooner, I've had to make sure that I'm writing down where I want my time to go, because every single person in this world has the same amount of time every single day. We all have 1,440 minutes to work with. It's what are you going to use with those minutes to really maximize your day that you have available to you. So scheduling everything out kind of leads into the second step of confidence for me, which is preparation. It allowed me to prepare for the day that was coming instead of reacting to the day that was here. I think those two things really helped me and gave me some confidence with being able to compartmentalize, stay focused and present on the things that needed my attention today, and then slowly kind of check things off my list and work through my schedule.
No, I think that's huge. Like scheduling is key, right? I mean, I'm huge on schedules too. But no, you're definitely right. If you're reactive to things that are coming up in life, like one, it's stressful. Two, like you're always gonna be like just uneasy, and then you're reactive to anything that happens, and then that comes off to your family. Your family doesn't want to ask you questions. They don't want to hang out with you because you're always in a bad mood or whatever. So being prepared is key, right? If you're prepared, then you can already know what's going to happen the next day. Schedule your family time. I do the same thing, right? Which
Mhm.
means that like for me, it's like 5 or 6 depending on the day. But I don't take phone calls. I don't do franchise calls or anything like that. It's like now it's family time, right? Because they need attention to you. You can't build this business or build this life of freedom like you originally wanted, and then in the process lose your connection with them, right?
I felt that. I definitely lost the connection with my family, and I think that was the biggest wake up call. It's like, okay, you go through why I made the decisions that I did to retire from baseball and go on the entrepreneur journey and be an entrepreneur to control some of my time and schedule. I did it so that I could spend more time with my family. All of a sudden, it turned into like I was on my phone from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m. Like I never was fully present with, my daughter, my son, and my wife to be able to be that present husband and father I always wanted to be. And like this Apple Watch, I love this Apple Watch because it allows me to not miss text message and phone calls throughout the day. But it got to a point where like I'd be sitting on the couch at 6 p.m. trying to give my son a bottle, getting ready for bed, and I'm just bing bing, and I'm like, I literally will take it off. I'll just chuck it. I'm like, nope, you no longer have access to me. See you later. I'll let you know when I'm available. So I've had to be better at that too, of like removing the access to Ryan so that I can be present for the people that matter most.
No, I mean that's huge. That's awesome. What kind of, I would say, mindset shifts, right? I know we talked about you having to find the skills that you were good at, with baseball, or what made you move up levels in baseball. But has there been any like mindset shifts or perspective shifts that you've learned over just your entrepreneurial journey, that would help someone that's, aspiring to be an entrepreneur? Because like you said, a lot of people think that you're going to get this life of freedom, right? Or you're gonna have all this time. You're not working a 9 to 5 anymore, but an entrepreneur technically can work 24 hours in the day if they let themselves. So,
I've been there.
so
I know
like,
you have too.
yeah, 100%. And I've talked to you like when I was in the thick of it, and you were playing baseball, and I know you would just look at me like, dude, like let's go to the shooting range. I'm like, dude, I can't. Like I got this, and it was all. I just saw the world as fires, right? So it was like, what perspectives or mindset shifts have you had in just your entrepreneurial, journey?
God, so many. I think perspective is my favorite word since I've retired from baseball, because for 31 years of my life, I lived in one perspective of a baseball player. Like that was just everything. And like I couldn't understand that you had more important things to do instead of let's go hang out and go to the shooting range. Like I didn't understand. It doesn't mean I was trying to be a jerk about it, or I was discrediting what you were doing. I just didn't understand.
Right.
So I spend a lot more time understanding what people might be going through or where they might be coming from, and being less reactive to how it might make me feel, and spend more time understanding why does that person feel that way, or what is that person potentially going through right now. And something that's really stuck out to me or that sticks with me now is everyone's life and day is hard. If you have the luxury in your life to choose what your hard is, I think it's the most powerful thing in the world, because you choose that hard because it's your reason why. If your reason why is bigger than your hard that you're dealing with, it's gonna allow you to push through no matter what. Just like you, I remember you sent me pictures and videos of when you were painting and decorating the gym right there, and it was hard. You guys were up late. You had family that was coming to help. You were probably working 16, 18-hour days there just trying to get it up and running, but you didn't care. It never felt like it was a grind or it was killing you. maybe to some regard because of lack of sleep, but you the why outweighed the hard, so you were able to push through some of that. And I think for me, as long as I'm able to maintain the ability to choose my hard, I know that I can take it head on because I've already done hard things in my life. I've already succeeded at the highest of levels. I've already failed at the highest of levels. Like, it didn't break me. It bent the hell out of me, but it didn't break me. So it just showed me that I have some resiliency and I have some skills that were developed over the 30 years of playing baseball, and I just have to figure out where I'm putting those skills to work in the entrepreneur journey.
No, I think that's awesome. That's a huge perspective change. And I heard, I want to say it was 50 Cent that said it, but I might be mistaken. In an interview, right? He was saying that, being broke, it's hard, right? It's stressful.
Hmm.
But being
Yep.
rich, it's hard. It's stressful, right?
Yep.
So going to the fact of what you said, like, you get to choose your hard, right? If you want to run a business, it's hard. If you want to, work a 9 to 5, it's still hard, right?
Yep.
But you get to choose your hard. And if you choose and you realize that it's your choice, then at least the why behind that hard is a little bit more meaningful, and it doesn't feel like a grind, and it feels like you're actually molding your life. Because if you think about, we say as entrepreneurs, like, I'm in the grind, or I'm grinding right now. But if you think, like, when you grind something, you're wearing it down, right?
Yeah.
So instead of grinding, like, we're molding the life that we want. We're not losing any clay in the process, right? So that's one of the huge perspective changes that I had to learn too along the way. And I mean,
Hmm.
that's something that, I mean, even I think when you first became an entrepreneur, like, we talked about it, but it didn't resonate because that's one of those skills that we talked about that you only get to learn through time. Like, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything when someone tells it to you.
I think the biggest piece too, to like your initial question, that's such a great point, Dev, is the one thing that I stopped doing when I was playing baseball in the later years is reflecting. Like, I stopped reflecting on my performance. Like, I have written up on my chalkboard right here behind the camera. It's the 3 steps of success. It's number 1 is prepare, number 2 is perform, number 3 is reflect. I
Yep.
would always prepare and always perform, but I never reflected. And the one year that I did reflect, I would go back after every game and I would write down about my bats, about how I felt in those at bats. It helped me bring closure to some of those moments. And I stopped reflecting. I don't know why. We just, as human beings, we forget the things that help make us successful, or maybe it felt like an inconvenience. The circumstances changed, whatever the excuse could be. I stopped reflecting, so I've had to start reflecting a lot more now, just because of how different my days can look, even though they're organized and scheduled. So every night I'll come into my office around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I'll sit down on my journal. I write three things down that I did really well that day, and I'll pick one thing that I thought I could have done better at, or that I feel like I lost control on. And it just helps me bring some closure to that day, so that when I wake up the next day, I know I'm already prepared for that morning routine. I know that I'm prepared for the first half of the workday, and I don't have to sit there and hang on to the day that just already happened.
No, I mean, honestly, that's a huge one. And if you're listening right now, make sure you take note of that, because that's something that I've talked about before. And you might think it's dumb, but honestly, when you reflect, and believe me, just like you said, that I've gone through phases where I forget to do it, and then all of a sudden I'm like, man, I just need, like, why is this happening? And then all of a sudden I'll start reflecting again, and all of a sudden everything starts improving, right? Because when you can reflect and you can be critical of yourself, one, it helps improve your state of mind, your mental process of understanding why it happened, why did they do that, or what could they had felt. But also, it allows you to grow your emotional intelligence, right? So you're not reactive in situations, and allows you
Mm-hmm.
to take a step back because you've already analyzed this. Because things are just like history; it repeats itself. Problems repeat themselves over time at scale, right? So when you've already faced that problem and know why that problem is happening, you're like, no worries. So I think that's a huge lesson, like, learned is, and believe me, you'll forget it again, and then you'll
Yes,
remember it
100%.
again. You
Just
know,
just remind me of it next time I forget, please. Thank you.
exactly. But with that, so reflecting is one of the answers to the next question that I'm going to ask you. But what else do you do in basically when you're stressed with business, with life? Like, what are the things or tools that you use to kind of alleviate that stress or help yourself basically overcome that feeling?
That's a good question, because I think this is something that I talk with a lot of the people that I work with now, is almost like preparing for am I allowed to curse on here? I've already
Yeah,
said a
yeah,
couple
yeah.
of
You're
that.
good.
Like, you got to prepare for the shit to hit the fan. Like, the only thing that we have guaranteed in our life is that the shit is going to hit the fan over and over and over again. And if we
Hmm.
don't ever prepare for that moment of when the shit's going to hit the fan, it's always going to catch us by surprise. And I say this a little bit more confidently now because I have some systems and processes that I put in place to allow me to reset. For example, like a week ago on a Wednesday, I had a really, really distracted and rough first half of my day. It was 12 o'clock. I hadn't accomplished anything on my schedule or my to do list to accomplish for that day. And I felt the demons start talking to my head. They started spiraling. They were picking up some momentum. I started listening to myself instead of speaking to myself, and I couldn't grab it. So the biggest thing that I do now is I'll meditate. Like I will just lay on my office floor. I will close my eyes and I'll set a timer on on my watch for 14 minutes and 24 seconds. 14 minutes 24 seconds is 1% of our day, and I try to live by, if I can get 1% better every single day, I know that I'm going to get where I need to be, because that's going to compound over time. So I'll lay down on the ground. I'll meditate for 10 minutes or 15 minutes in that ballpark, and then I kind of have written up on my cork board here. It's my personal MVP process. So it allows me to see some of my missions, my visions, and then my principles, and I can read through that statement to help my mind refocus. That converts the brain from me listening to it to now telling it what I want it to believe. So those are the couple things that I'll really do. But the meditation's been the biggest thing, because, like, when the kids are screaming in the back of the car, you're driving with the wife, you can feel her blood pressure starting to rise. She's now stressed. I have a choice. I can either hop on that emotional roller coaster with her and be a part of that journey, or I can find a way to regulate my emotions in that time. So like the breathing cycles that I'll do is a 6 second or 6 breath inhale, 2 second hold, eight breath exhale. The 6 to 8, like repeating that as many times as I can. It just allows me to get present and keep that blood pressure down a little bit when the children screaming really wants to spike it up for me.
No, I mean that's awesome. I'm glad you explained it, because when you were saying how long you laid on the floor, I was like, where in the fuck did you come up with that number? And then I was like,
Bro, it flies by every time, because I'm like, I'm gonna waste 14 minutes of my day right now. Are you kidding me? And I look at the time, I'm like, God, it's gonna be 10:27 by the time I'm done with this, and I could have done this. I'm like, dude, just shut up and just lay down. I wake
no,
up, I'm like, whoa,
you said
it's gonna
14 minutes and 24 seconds, and I was like, why? That's such a rare. And I was like, okay, there is a meaning. Like, I'm gonna ask if you don't say it. So I'm glad you said it. It's so true though, right? Because you think 14, 15 minutes, it's, there's such a long time, and when you think about 1% of your day, like, damn, like, it's not even that long, right? I still got
no,
99% of my day left. Um, but what you're saying with like the breathing and stuff, have you read the book by Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk?
no, I have not.
Okay, so I actually just recommended it to someone else the other day. It's a great book, but it reminded me of it because you were talking about the breathing. And in one chapter of the book, he actually talks about, I think there's, I want to, if I might be mistaken, but 9 different breathing techniques, for one for like amping yourself up, one for calming yourself down, like this whole different breathing techniques, and there are different counts and stuff. So it's really cool, but I do recommend checking that out. But I think that's huge, because at the end of the day, you you have events that happen in your life, right? And the events can be, the kids are screaming, and you could feel your wife's blood pressure rising. Now you have your basically outcome, or your response. So when your response is dictated by your emotional intelligence, how you react to the situation. So you can either choose to react by yelling at the kids at the back, telling your wife to just relax, whatever. But you have to realize your response is the outcome of the event, and your outcome is someone else's event. The event is inchangeable. So the kids screaming, your wife getting upset, like, you can't change that. Like, that's just how they feel. But your response dictates your outcome, and your outcome dictates someone else's inchangeable event, right?
Yep.
So once you start to realize that, you start to take a step back, like you're saying before, just like, holding your breath and doing the breath techniques, or meditating or something like that nature, before your responses are dictating other people's outcomes and events. So I think that's a huge lesson learned, because as high functioning people, both you and I think it's just in our DNA, but I know both of us are short tempered. So it's one of those things where being short tempered and being an entrepreneur that's high stress is not the best combination, until you learn those skills of how to kind of mitigate that temper, right?
Yep, 100%.
So what does your daily routine look like? I know I want to, because I want to see if you mentioned something we talked about, on the first episode you're on. What's your day
Oh, I
after?
read I read I read way more than I ever did before that episode, and I
When do you
definitely
read?
read in the mornings and I
Okay,
read in the
that's what I'm
nights.
looking for.
I definitely read in the mornings and I read the nights. I did that for probably 9 months in a row. And it wasn't until it turned winter here in Arizona and it was freezing in the mornings when I would go outside and try and read. I was like, I can't do this. Like, I loved in the summer, I can get up at 5 a.m. The sun's already out. It's going to wake me up a little bit. But I just have something quick that I read. I listen to more things in the morning now. Like, I'll have some podcasts that I'll listen to, just 3 to 5 minutes. It's really just like reminding myself, because a lot of people think that motivation is just like you have it or you don't. Like, motivation has to be practiced. I have to motivate myself every single day, and every day might have a little bit different motivation. It might have a similar one. Just trying to find a way to listen to a couple things in the morning, 5-10 minutes of just motivation, confidence, getting clear. And then I have it's the Daily Stoic writer. He has one called the Daily Dad. So there's a 1 or 2 page little blurb that I'll read on my phone, and it brings a lot of perspective as a parent for me, that helps me set my mind right before the kids are awake, to kind of have some of that. And then honestly, I find windows throughout my day. If I ever feel like I'm really struggling middle of the day, like, and I just can't get focused, I'll just set a timer on my phone for 10-15 minutes. I'll read a book that's on my bookshelf behind me now. I have a bookshelf now, Devin. That's a big step for me. Never had one of those before. So I'll just grab a book and I'll read 15 minutes. I'm like, if I can't get any work done right now because I'm not focused, let me at least read for 15 minutes. Like, I might as well just, accomplish that one little task. And then before bed, I'll read a little bit as well. So now I have 3 to 4 windows of my day when I'm reading. And last time you and I had the podcast we recorded, I was like, yeah, man, I hate reading. I can't do this. Like, I had to force myself. I wasn't good at it.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's awesome. And then that's awesome to hear that it's had an impact on you, because that's one of the hard lessons I had to learn. And believe me, I still listen to a lot of stuff too, right? Like, I don't only just read. And I'm the same way. I read probably only a little bit a day, probably 10, maybe 20 minutes, if that. But it's like, my thing is, like, I'm huge on podcasts and huge on audiobooks, because again, I'm moving all the time, just like yourself. And it's easier to get that in. But it's one of those things where learning, like, everyone that's successful talks about reading, and I was like, well, shit. Like, in high school, I always faked my book reports. I would buy the books or read the book that there was a movie on it, and I would just do it on the movie. And then I knew the teachers that would say, well, if you do a movie book, I'm gonna see if you know the differences. Well, I would just Google what are the differences between the movie and the book, right? Like, I
There's a
worked
reason
that way
that someone created the websites where they would give you like the abbreviated version of the book. Like, there's I forgot what it was called. Oh God, it was like Pink Elephant or something. There was a couple different platforms. There's like 2 or 3. I was like, there's a reason these exist. Okay.
around.
Not everyone likes to read.
Yeah, and then learning all of a sudden, like, to be successful or to really grow and grow yourself personally, like, reading is a huge part of it. Listening to
Mhm.
stuff is a huge part of it, because, like, I don't know everything. I know you don't know everything, but at the same time, even like the top level people, they know they don't know everything, and that humility is key, because that's what allows you to grow, right? Once you feel like you're at your peak, then there's no going up, right? So I know we're a little shorter on time today, so I want to dive into my favorite question. Hypothetically, if everything was to be erased, right? Everything from baseball, everything from your entrepreneurship, right? Not your family, obviously, but what is one lesson or one piece of advice that you could leave a entrepreneur? Doesn't matter if they're going to be an entrepreneur and they've been in for 10 years. What is that one legacy piece of advice that would be basically on your tombstone for everyone to see?
Mm. I have something written down up here. I think just the presence is so important. Mm. God, that's such a great question, Devin. I hate it. I hate it because there's so many answers that I could give you. I think, like, purpose, understand the purpose of why you're doing something. If you're able to identify why you are doing something, then failure is not an option. And also understand that, like, you're gonna fail. It's just the one guarantee we have. Learn how to take that failure and convert that into learning, that you now have one less mistake that you're going to make moving forward. I think that perspective on what failing actually is and how can I define it personally is probably the 2 biggest things. So define your why and learn how to fail properly. I think those 2 things will push you through any sort of adversity that is going to come, and stay focused on your telescope goals and work backwards from there and build out the step-by-step process to accomplish it. And it doesn't need to be perfect. Just go, just start building the airplane as you're flying it and see where it goes.
100%. No, that's awesome. That's definitely a mic drop moment, and that's definitely a legacy piece right there. Where can people connect with you? I know it's on the first episode, but if things have changed, or what do you got going on?
Dude, I'm on TikTok now. Did you know that?
I did
Are
not.
you on TikTok?
I am.
TikTok's wild, dude. Well, maybe we should find each other. I'm at Ryon.Healy. It's RYON.HEALY on TikTok. And then everything else, I'm RC Healy 25. Trying to change it so it's all uniform, but I'm active on Instagram. I'm active on TikTok, and then Facebook will get some stuff. But those are the two platforms I'm the most active on.
Perfect. Well, if you guys are, listening to the show and you guys found value, which I know you did, so don't even fucking lie, make sure you guys share this with a friend, leave a review. And like always, guys, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Ryon, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on today.
Oh, man. Always a pleasure. I can't wait for our third time. It's coming soon.
Oh, we will.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Just in the game of life, mindset causes shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to be slacking. I hustle harder, I go get